I think there are a couple of reasons. First off, Florida has always been viewed as the big obstacle to any change in American policy toward Cuba. And we found in this poll that, in fact, Floridians are more willing to accept change, embrace that change, than all Americans are. South Floridians, which is where the Cuban population is centered in Miami-Dade, are even stronger than Floridians as a whole. So that's a big opening. I think the second thing is that we're in a time when I think people are conscious the world's a dangerous place, but yet the United States talks to almost everybody. We're negotiating with Iran right now, trying to do something about the Middle East, and it's almost anachronistic that after 50-some years we still have no relationship with Cuba. The two things that are the most interesting, one I semi-expected, but when you see it, it's still striking. Men much more supportive of change than women. We tend to view the gender gap along the ideological and partisan continuum. Women are more progressive Democrats, men are more conservative Republicans. But this issue, I don't think, is operating on that basis. And in fact, we had a majority of Republicans who support a change in policy as well, which was intriguing. I think men in this case are more willing to say, let's have a change, let's take a risk, let me buy some cigars. You know, and so the opening is there. The second thing is also, this is the national poll again, the fact that some of the strongest support for change in policy is coming from people that are 65 years or older. And that is very significant for this reason. If you're 65 years old in 2014, that means that when the big events happen in Cuba, Castro regime taking over, the Bay of Pigs, the Cuban Missile Crisis, you were just becoming a teenager. You saw it. You've witnessed this entire saga. Obviously, if you're over 70, you may have come of age at that time. So I think for older Americans to have seen the entire sort of progression or lack of progression of the Cuba question for all these years, I think they finally hit a point and said to themselves, of course we should be talking to them. We tried it this way for over 50 years. I've seen it. Nothing happened as a result. Why not change? I think it's a good term because I think, particularly going back to Florida and going to, and obviously the Hispanic population, which we all know is rising as a political force, and we see in the immigration debate having more importance in national politics, to have those two groups so solidly behind a change in policy, I think should be a wake-up call to folks to say, you're not going to pay a price. If you think it's time for the U.S. to start opening up relations, start opening up trade and travel for all Americans or American businesses with Cuba, you're not going to pay a price politically for taking that stand. And from that standpoint, I think it should be somewhat of a wake-up call. I don't want to say that the poll is going to be necessarily the causal agent of it. But if you ask me at this time, 3 or 4 years from now, with a new president, whether that president's a Democrat or a Republican, will the American policy toward Cuba be identical to what it is today? I would say absolutely not. There will be a change. Whether how formal it is, how sweeping it is, whether it involves executive or congressional action, what happens in Cuba as a result, those are all unknowns. Will the policy stay static?